History 217, Lecture 4, Settlement and Statehood, Part Mormon Settlement. I would like to discuss Mormon settlement in Nevada with you, so you can get a good understanding of that. The big focus on this is I'm going to be asking you, I may ask you a question on the midterm to compare and contrast Mormon settlement of Nevada, northern and southern Nevada. You have Mormon settling northern Nevada, you have Mormon settling southern Nevada. There's some differences. And so that's what we kind of want to get out of here is Mormon settlement in northern and southern Nevada. Also, we want to kind of get, some examples of, the culture, life during that era, the early 1850s, in western Utah Territory, which is modern-day northern Nevada. First American settlements. The town of Genoa in northern Nevada, it's still a town today, it does declare itself the first settlement in Nevada. It's the first European-American or American settlement in Nevada. Originally called Mormon Station in the summer of 1850, when Hampton Beatty, a group of LDS veterans of the Mexican-American War, joined a non-LDS company led by Captain Joseph DeMont to head west to California. Why are people going to California in 1849, 1850? Gold. And so they're going to go west. When this wagon train, when this group gets to the eastern edge of the Sierra Nevadas, Beatty and several others decide to stay behind and set up a trading post, and they call it Mormon Station. If you Google map Genoa, Nevada, Genoa, you can look it up. You can see what Genoa, Nevada looks like today. Next, the next person we want to talk about is a guy named John Reese. He is actually Beatty's uncle, Hampton Beatty's uncle, and a man named Steve Kinsey. They get approval from Brigham Young. They're called to go to Carson Valley, not Carson City. That was a mistake. Carson Valley. Carson City doesn't exist yet. Carson Valley with 17 men, 13 wagons, and they're supposed to create a permanent settlement. In discussing John Reese, this is kind of the first cultural thing we want to get about living in 19th century Utah, western Utah. For Mormons in the 19th century, you were supposed to gather with the saints, the Latter-day Saints. You're supposed to gather to Zion. And remember, we talked about that before. Zion is the spiritual kingdom of God on earth. You have the political entity called the State of Deseret, but you're supposed to gather to Zion. So in 19th century Utah, wherever you joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you were supposed to at some point move to Zion, to Utah. Even though, Joseph Smith had a revelation that Missouri was Zion, when the church went west to Utah, Utah became the gathering place, or Zion. And so, in 19th century Utah, you were supposed to live with the saints, stay with them, with the group. If you left it without permission or the calling, it was generally viewed as you were leaving the church. You were apostatizing. Also, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint leaders like Brigham Young and other church leaders did not want Latter-day Saints to go to California to mine for gold. That was sinful. That was wicked. And so, if you had Mormons going to California without church sanction to go look for gold, that was similar to leaving the church. You were apostatizing. You were leaving the church. Okay? So Hampton Beatty and these other LDS veterans, they're going to California to mine for gold. That's generally not a good thing it's not viewed as a good thing in 19th century Utah. Okay. So you're going without sanction, and you're participating in a worldly venture. So for Beatty and his men, his group, they're not really. They're kind of leaving. They're in some ways leaving the church. Right? Reese is an example of someone. He gets church approval to go. He's called to go to Western Utah Territory. He came to Beatty's uncle, so he knows that Beatty's out there at the Mormon station, and so Brigham Young authorizes 17 men, 30 wagons to go and set up a permanent settlement. And so when you study Genoa, Nevada, Western Utah Territory, not every Mormon is the same. You have some Mormons that are more faithful than others. Okay, and so you have that distinction. So, like I said, I believe I left it on the midterm, but there may be a question on Northern Nevada Mormons and Southern Nevada Mormons. You will need to tell the difference. Okay, when you study, look for this. Northern Nevada Mormons, there is little to no preaching to native tribes. So even though that's one of the reasons why Mormons went west, hey, we have a book for you. Okay, you're part of the house of Israel, part of God's chosen people. You used to know Christ. You used to believe in Jesus, and Jesus even came here and preached to you. And so, we have a book for you. And so, but Northern Nevada Mormons, when you say Northern, there's little to no preaching to Native Americans. So for a lot of Northern Nevada Mormons, it's kind of similar to, in some ways, to other American, European American settlers. It's, kind of ignore preaching to them. Faithful Mormons in Northern Nevada avoided mining because it was a quote-unquote Gentile or non-Mormon activity. Mormons in the 19th century referred to non-Mormons as Gentiles because in Mormon theology, being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints meant that you were part of the house of Israel and God's chosen people. And so, if you're part of the house of Israel, then non-Mormons are Gentiles. It is interesting for Jewish people, because to Jewish people, they're Jews and non-Jews are Gentiles. So it is a little interesting. It's a little interesting, turn of phrase. To a Jewish person, a Mormon would be just as much a Gentile as anyone else. For 19th century Mormons, though, they consider themselves part of the house of Israel. So they tended to call non-Mormons Gentiles. Right? And so, anyways, that's kind of an interesting little side there. But so faithful Mormons or faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints avoided mining. Church leaders preached against it, and remember, you were persecuted. If you've been a Mormon a while, you were persecuted by non-Mormons back east. And so this leads to another kind of a cultural thing we have to understand about 19th century Utah and Western Utah Territory. Mormons in the 19th century tended to be a very close-knit group that tended to be suspicious of and not trusting of outsiders. And so you kind of have a close-knit group. And so if you're an outsider, not Mormon, or you've left the church, you were given the cold shoulder. People tended to not be overly nice to you, kind of thing. Tended to be not trusting and suspicious of you. So, if you were a European American, if you're an Indian, there was more of a desire to work with them and be friendly with them because you believe they're part of God's chosen people, and you want to trade with them and convert them, hopefully. But for European Americans, for other Americans, if you weren't Mormon, you tend to be viewed with suspicion, and so kind of a close-knit group. So the faithful avoided mining. Faithful members of the church generally avoided any contact or kept interactions with non-Mormons outside of Indians, non-Mormons low. Most faithful Mormons left Northern Nevada in 1857, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Most left in 1857 and did not return. Okay, that'll be different in southern Nevada than southern Nevada. And then most were farmers and traders in northern Nevada. So this is so you have the Mormon settlement. You have the Mormon settlement, Hampton Beatty, John Reese in northern Nevada, Genoa, Mormon Station. There is the non-Mormon settlement in the region, Frank Hall, north of Mormon Station in Carson Valley. There's a lot of hay, grassland, very cool, very exciting. And so he will set up and create Eagle Station. So there's that. One of the questions on the midterm will be, what is the conflict between Mormons and non-Mormons in western Utah Territory out in Carson Valley? So these will be the reasons you want to talk about. Number one, distant government or no government. Okay, you're in western Utah Territory. Okay, Google Map Genoa, Nevada. Okay, see how far away from Salt Lake City it is. Okay, your territorial capital is in Salt Lake City, several hundred miles away. Remember, we're in an era before cars and planes and all that. You're either walking or on horseback. Okay, so the government is very distant. This idea of squatters' government is extremely common in Western 19th century Western American history. Generally, when settlers went out into the middle of nowhere, before government got there, you have a squatters' government. You'll set up your own government. So let's say you're a group of settlers in an area, 30 families, 50 families, whatever. You get together and you create your own government. You'd elect your own judge. You'd elect your own sheriff. You kind of create your own government. Squatters government. And so one of the conflicts is, for western Utah Territory, people on Eagle Station and Mormon Station, you're far, far away on Judea's plains. I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and so you have to create your own government. Another issue for non-Mormons is Mormon church control of government. Mormons, of course, have no problem with it. It's like, what cares? So, number one, Brigham Young is not only the prophet and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he's also the territorial governor of Utah Territory. So if you're a non-Mormon in Utah, Utah and then, what's today Nevada, northern Nevada, if you're not Mormon, your territorial governor is also the leader of the dominant church in the territory. And so for a lot of non-Mormons, that's upsetting. Mormons have no problem with it. They're like, what's your problem? They don't have a problem with it. Let me ask you the question. Are you going to be persecuted if your church prophet is also the governor of the territory and you're the predominant religion? Right? You're not going to get... Remember, Mormons are out west to escape persecution back east. So for a lot of Mormons, church control of government, it's not a big deal. You're not going to get persecuted, right? For non-Mormons, it looks like what? Church and state are the same thing. Your territorial governor, your political office, is the same as the church prophet of the predominant religion. So non-Mormons don't like it. 1854, the Utah territorial legislature finally gets their act together and creates Carson County. And in 1855, they will send Apostle Orson Hyde out to settle the region. Orson Hyde, again, for non-Mormons in Mormon Station and Eagle Station, you have your church leader, your political leader, Orson Hyde, in the region, is also a church apostle. Okay, so in the Mormon church, you have the prophet or president. He has 2 counselors or advisors, and below him are 12 apostles. So that's how high up Orson Hyde is, right? The Brigham Young is here, and Orson Hyde's like right here. And so for non-Mormons, that's a problem. The other issue is, where are you exactly? Are you in California or Utah? So for a lot of settlers in the region, you're so far away from Salt Lake City. Like, people are like, maybe we're in California. People, Google Map Sacramento, the capital of California, the state of California. The Lake Tahoe area, Genoa, Carson Valley, Genoa. If you're living in that region in the early 1850s, you are closer to the state capital of California than you are to your own territorial capital, Salt Lake City. And so some people argue we're not in we're not in the territory of Utah. We're in the state of California. Congress has to send out the U.S. government to survey out where exactly you are. And it turns out you are in western Utah territory. So, and that's the present. And as we all know, the present day, or maybe we don't, the present day boundary of Nevada and California is what, halfway through Lake Tahoe. Here's a fun quote. Thomas Williams, a non-Mormon, letter to Brigham Young, the governor. The citizens of this valley declare in language too strong to utter. They're upset. Too strong to utter. They'll no longer be tried or governed by Mormon law. He continues by stating residents are refusing to recognize writs, documents. And then what does Thomas Williams threaten? If there are no legal steps taken to organize this part of the territory, the safety of the inhabitants will always be in danger. Residents of Carson Valley will no longer pay taxes levied against them by the Utah Territory. And many are told to wait till we're annexed by California. So, you look at the date. Can you see 1854, Carson County is created. The territorial legislature is like, okay, we better get our act together. So. And then a fun quote. Not all Mormons are the same, and there's a lot of non-Mormons out there too. So, Edwin Woolley, a Mormon church bishop and cattle rancher, wrote in 1853 wrote a letter to his friend, the journalist. What did he say? Fenced or unfenced, this is a great and wonderful country. Genoa, Nevada, Carson Valley, right on the eastern edge of Lake Tahoe. Okay. Fenced or unfenced, this is a great and wonderful country. A place for cattle to get wonderfully fattened. Like I told you earlier, where Eagle Station is, tons of hay, grassland and hay everywhere. Whether it has changed for the better or worse since you were here, that friend had visited the region several years earlier. So Evan Woolley says, whether it's changed for the better or the worse since you were here, I cannot say. But it is the most godforsaken place I've ever been in. And as for Mormonism, I can't find it here. If the name remains, the spirit has fled. So, Evan Woolley thinks the country's great, the land is wonderful, but he's like, I don't know, these people are wicked. Okay. And then we want to end on Mormons in northern Nevada leave. You have the Utah War, 1857. Okay. So the Utah War, so Mormons get to Utah in 1847. Utah Territory is created by 1850. And so you have about a decade here, 1847 to 57. You have Mormons way west in Utah, and Washington, D.C. is getting all these reports from Mormons and non-Mormons alike. A lot of the non-Mormon stories are negative. Some are true, some are mixes of the truth and lies, and some are just outright falsehoods. But all kinds of stories are going west to Washington, D.C. Okay. The biggest story, and it is a fib, it's not correct, but the biggest issue becomes, by 1856, politicians in Washington, D.C. are being told that Brigham Young and the Mormons are planning on detaching Utah Territory from the United States, creating their own spiritual kingdom out west, taking over, and aligned with the Indians and taking over and separating Utah Territory and the region, not just Utah Territory, but Nevada, what's Idaho, Montana, Arizona, just be this big block in the middle of the West, keeping people for California. So the president believes that Utah is in rebellion. So he sends several thousand troops west to put down this rebellion. That's what's called the Utah War. The U.S. government believes that Brigham Young and the Mormons are allying with the Indians out west to separate Utah Territory, and not just Utah Territory, like the whole region, the state of Deseret, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, the whole region, detaching it from the United States and creating their own country. Okay? The Kingdom of Deseret. So there's the background. What are the effects on Carson County, where we live, Nevada, right? We're Nevada history, so Western Utah Territory. Brigham Young calls for all Latter-day Saints to come to Zion, the center place of Zion, which at that time is Utah. Okay. So what you're supposed to do if you're a faithful Latter-day Saint, you're supposed to leave your settlements and come to the main part of Utah Territory. So the population drops as most Mormons, most faithful Mormons, and most Mormons leave the region and go back to Utah. Well, Utah proper. Now you are in Utah Territory, but you're practically in California. So, but you're supposed to go back to the main part of Utah Territory. You have a return to squatter government. Orson Hyde, church leadership, they leave the region too. So you have to return to squatters government. Utah Territorial Legislature kind of get ignored again. John Reese in the summer of 1857, you have a new attempt to either get the region annexed by California or have your own territorial legislature created. Okay. And so most Mormons leave because of the Utah War. The aftermath of the Utah War, the worst event of the Utah War is the Mountain Meadows Massacre. A group of Arkansas, Missouri settlers are massacred by local residents. Fearful of war, war hysteria takes over. They're fearful that the settlers are going to help the U.S. Army. There's also rumors that people in this wagon train helped murder Joseph Smith, the prophet, 13 years earlier. So you get a war hysteria, rumors, people get paranoid and upset. So you have local residents massacring a wagon train. And so, called the Mountain Meadows Massacre. So it's the worst event of this Utah War. It's really the only event of the Utah War, pretty much. And so, you have, that's the big, for historians, the biggest effect of this Utah War is just the war hysteria, the psychology of people getting so worked up, so escalated, that you do things you wouldn't normally do otherwise, kind of a thing. You have the U.S. Army does come out to Utah. Brigham Young and the Army negotiate federal control of Utah Territory. Brigham Young will be removed as governor. The military is stationed outside of Salt Lake City. And for Western Nevada Territory, what you and I are interested in because we're in Nevada history, the Utah government, Utah Territorial Government, sends a Judge John Cradlebaugh, out to Carson County to restore some semblance of order in government. For those of you that think history's boring, you should look up Judge John Cradlebaugh. The guy was blind in one eye and couldn't use one of his arms. Judge Cradlebaugh was a hanging judge in the era of hanging judges. So Cradlebaugh is an interesting historical figure if you want to look him up. Cradlebaugh hated Mormons, did not like Indians. I would have to do more research. I don't know what he thought of Mexicans, but the guy hated Mormons like dang. Okay. He did not like Indians. And what he thought of Mexicans is open. I'll leave that for your research. But Cradlebaugh. He is from the South, so he has typical 19th century attitudes about black people. Regular at the time period, but the guy was going to hang everyone. He got it. He's an interesting historical figure you can read on now. Anyways, and so you have Mormons leaving northern Nevada. Okay. Thank you for your time with this video.